Hi everyone, I'm going to show you today how to call the stock API Alpha Vantage with Python code. Excuse my speech impediment there. So here we're going to go to their website and then use an email. This is just a temporary email to kind of get the API key. So the API key is what lets you get access right here to the stock data that you're going to API request on Alpha Vantage. So if you go to their documentation really quick, I'm going to save my key and .py. So we just made a Python script here. I'm just going to throw the key in there right now. And if you go here, you can get, let me zoom out, you can get stock prices, daily adjusted, weekly, monthly. You can get earnings. We're going to be using earnings. And here, as you can see, when we go to this section, it takes you to it. So if I go cash flow, it moves it. You can get a JSON structure out of it to get annual earnings or quarterly if we scroll down enough. Or you can write a JavaScript or CNET if you want to. There's different ways to access this data, but Python is probably the simplest one we can do. So we'll be using some of this data that you see here in the request library built into Python. So I'm going to show you how we're going to code that and get around some issues. So let me get my script up. So first thing we're going to do is make a Python virtual environment. If you don't know how to do this or don't understand what this is, Google it. It makes a virtual environment for you to install software packages into a folder to separate software dependency issues. Basically, you'll need a virtual environment, and we're going to need to read a couple of stock tickers. So the requirements, if we go back to the URL, is that we need to provide a stock ticker to the URL API. We need to provide a key, and we need to provide a output path. So this is just some pseudocode at the top here, but we're going to read in a list of stock tickers. So this is the steel industry here, and this is every ticker that I got off finviz.com, so financialvisual.com. You can kind of just get some of this data for free. And yeah, there's 23 steel makers in the world, in US, China. There's probably more or subcomponents or smaller industries that revolve around the steel industry, and you can get their volume, their price, their PE. A lot of interesting stuff here. You can kind of look at, this PE for this steel manufacturer in China is huge. It's very overvalued compared against everyone else. I would actually short this stock if I was anyone right now, or if I had cash, but not a lot of volume. So there's a lot of money in that group right there. So anyways, let's say I want their earning reports. So I'm going to take this ticker right here, and I'm going to read my Excel file with pandas. So we need to install pandas. And when we install pandas, this goes into an object called the data frame. And we can also then read that data frame. So I'm going to see my Excel file data again if I print out the object. If this installs, there we go. So installed. So we're going to run this code. So the way you do that is python.main.py. Sorry. There was an error, and this is expected. So you can't read Excel files unless you install something called OpenPyXL, or it's a library that lets you read Excel files that you otherwise could not. Excel files are created in XML, so That's really what it is, and that's why you see XML file here, extension. It's like you need a library to parse the data, to read the data with software and code. So we'll run that again and you'll see the data. So right here, just like an open Excel file here, I could see all my stock tickers for this company. So if I open up the steel industry folder, I opened it up right here, we can see that we have the data here. So, all right, let's close that. So let's extract our tickers. And what that means is that I only want this column of ACNT, ASTL, Clifton, Cleveland Cliffs, right? So the way we do that is that you take your data object, you have these brackets here, and you type in ticker. So if I wanted to just look at the company name, for example, I could replace this right here, print out my list of tickers right here. Let's comment. Oh, sorry about that. Let's comment this out and then run the code again. Right there. So I have a list of all the corporate names right here. I'm going to change that back though. All right, so that means we have all their sticker data. So we have all the companies that we want to read. So you would just change this Excel file right here to tickers that you want to check out. So I'm going to take my key here, my new key, and paste this in. All right, so we made a variable equals to the API key, and then we have a pathway or output folder, and we'll need to make a new folder. So we'll just make a new folder here, output folder right there. If you're in Windows, make sure you place an R in front of the string. If it's on Mac, it doesn't really matter, and then you need a slash ahead of it. Now I'm going to show you the second part, is that we want to create a function. So we're going to have to create a function for the URL and pass those values. So I'm going to create a module, or it's really just a script, and we're going to call it API call.py. And here I'm going to import the libraries I need to read data from Alpha Vantage. So we have Alpha Vantage at the top, and we're going to need to do this next, where we pip install Alpha Vantage. So while it gets going, I'm going to get the rest of my code in here. So we want to create a data frame, an empty data frame, and then a counter. So this is a counter. And then this is a empty data frame. Now that's done, what we're going to do is that we're going to for loop through our list. And what I mean by that is, if I split this over here, look at the Excel sheet again. If I look at this Excel sheet again here, is that we're going to for loop, ACTN1, ASTL1, we're just going through the list like this with the code, and it can automatically do that for you. So while that happens every time, we're going to end up taking this URL here. So if we go back to Alpha Advantage, it's just easier if we Alpha Vantage documentation, earnings. So you'll take a URL like this right here, and then you're going to format it. So the ticker symbol goes where IBM goes, and we're going to add in curly brackets, and then we're going to replace demo with curly brackets here. And then every time you run a string through a variable, you can format it. So if I want to pass my ticker in the first location right here, it will pick it up right there with format. and then I can put my key. So it will grab the key string from my left-hand side here when we pass it through. It's grabbing the key variable right here. Don't know why it's not updating. There we go, it's updating now. I need to update VS Code, but we're going to pass the key string right here, then my list of tickers, and then we're for looping. So we're passing string 1, string 2, string 3 through this. That makes a unique string or URL that our request function will need to use. So this is the request function. Our URL string is passed here. So now that we passed our response, we get this response and we can print it out. So just for your demonstration purposes here, we are going to run the script again. So the behavior is that I'm doing Python/main. That means I'm running the script, right? And then I'm importing my function from this other script into here. So you're kind of like storing things within other things and then running them where you need to be most efficient. So right there, I'm getting a response from the API server. 200 means success right here. So we can also just read the response directly, read the text right here. So I want to get rid of that. And then run it again. Okay, and it's complaining that I've made too many API requests. So there's a cooldown period. So if you read this message, it says thank you for using the API, but now it's saying, okay, look, you have 5 calls per minute or 500 calls per day, and this is just a cooldown so you don't overload the server. Or basically they want to charge you monthly on financial data. You can get a lot of this financial data for free, like on Edgar. What Edgar is, if you're not aware, is that is filings and forms. So every public company on the stock market has to submit their earnings reports, and you can get those filings for free at Edgar here. I suspect that somewhere in their API, Alpha Vantage is getting data from there or directly from the New York Stock Exchange. You do have to realize that data response is not dynamic. You're not getting live data from the stock market. You're getting data from 5 minutes or 10 minutes ago. That doesn't mean that data is worthless. It just means it's historical data, and you can still use that to make predictions. People make a lot of statements like, past price behavior does not dictate future price behavior, but you wouldn't want to ignore the fact that, like, hey, a scandal happened in a company years ago, and you can see the price dip. So you can learn information from that and train models on top of that, or teach people how to learn the behavior of the stock market. So, it's not perfect, but it gives you more insight, analytical ability into how the markets change. So so we get a response, and the way we get around this cooldown period is that we have to wait a full minute, and unless we pay money, you don't have to wait otherwise. And then here we can print it out that we are I'm doing a type checking here. Type check, make sure it's a dictionary. So Python dictionary is what this is stored in. So we're basically, this function right here, .json, is taking the response and dumping all the data into Python. Into the Python objects in memory. So now what we're going to do is get that into a data frame. And I'm going to make sure no matter what happens, is that we're going to make sure that we get the quarterly earning reports. So like I told you earlier, you can take the headers of a dictionary and state its header. So as I showed you earlier on Alpha Advantage, you had annual earnings or quarterly earnings. So you could just replace this with annual to get annual earnings, or you can just, put in quarterly. And then we'll have an exception. So if this doesn't convert, if I didn't get the data that I selected at this step, we're going to say, this ticker didn't save, this data didn't save, right? And now after we try it, we're going to check again that the data converted correctly. So what's happening here is that I have to fix this, is that it's the indentation is not working. What happened is that in this moment, when I extracted, when I use this header, I'm extracting a list object into selected JSON. So I selected the JSON I wanted, and we're checking that, is this object a list? If it is, keep the for loop running. Otherwise, try this again, and then just say it didn't save, it just didn't work, and continue, just lets it continue. So now finally we're going to take our Python list selected JSON into pandas data frame. You can save data frames directly on your hard drive if you want to, or put it into a database. You would insert into a database, or do dynamic serverless function. Like if you built your own API and then you delivered that data on your website. So if you're looking at a portfolio and getting a price, things like that, you would save that into a database and call it when you need to, and maybe update once a month or something, or every few months, So just making that clear to your customer depending on what you're designing. And then there's a built-in to pandas, you can convert to CSV files if you want. So we're going to do two CSV function, and then we're going to do it to our output path. So if you remember here, we have an output path already defined. So let me zoom in for you. We have an output path defined right here, and we're passing that variable at the top of our function. So that will save directly into this output path when we run it. Now it's going to do that for the for loop, so we're just going to make sure that this is indented correctly. And then we're going to have a return statement at the end of the function. So not in the for loop. Right now, this is in the for loop. This is out of the for loop. So this makes sure that, we successfully queried data from IP Alpha Vantage right here. So now we're going to run it. So to make it clear, we have constructed a function here with 3 parameters, and then we're calling the function in a different script right here. So we're going to, so let me zoom out really quick. So basically we're for looping through this column of tickers. We're only printing out a typing, so that's why you only see dictionary, and now we're waiting a full minute, But if we go to our output folder, our data is right here. I can look at my quarterly earnings data. ACNT doesn't have a lot of quarterly earnings. No one recorded their expectations of this company or were surprised in any way. They used to do that, I guess. But if we go to Clifton, Cleveland Steel, for example, there is surprise percentage, surprise estimated earnings per share, reported data. So, yeah, we have to wait a full minute to wait until we get the rest of that data. And there it is. We just got Howden International Group. We got Friedman's earnings reports right there in a matter of seconds, really. So if I paid money, it would just kind of go instantly, but we can just wait for the cooldown period to extract your data. So, now we can from here, after we grab all this earnings data, we can just open this right up. If we open in the folder right here. We can see our data, and we have dates, and we have, they reported earnings of 2.61. They estimated 1.9, so they're surprised by that difference. That's a big jump. It's a big surprise. And you might say, like, oh, well, there's supply chain issues, so of course they're earning more money. Where are they going to get their steel fund from for all these construction projects? Well, Cleveland Steels is obviously the answer to that. Could be kind of, this is not financial advice, to make that clear, but you would kind of use this data to help your thought process out, and you can then apply a Jupyter Notebooks on this data, create your own training sets of what you need, essentially, for your company. So, yeah, that's it.